I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create lives of freedom and impact through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. Speaking of freedom and impact, imagine if you could make $500,000 in 1 year in software sales. Well, guess what? We are in luck because my guest today, Justin J. Johnson, knows exactly how to do that. He was the #1 account executive at Salesforce, I think in 4 different roles. He went on to become a 5-time sales leader. He's a top 40 CRO to watch. He's an author, and he developed a program, Beautiful Sales Savage. Or Justin, chime in here. Is it Beautiful Sales Savage or Beautiful Savage?
Beautiful Savage Sales Academy, also known as the Sales Rep Accelerator.
Yeah, and let's plug what is the website where people can find you, by the way?
The softwaresalescoach.com.
Exactly. So he's got softwaresalescoach.com. This guy has done some amazing things with proven success, and he has a huge heart to give back to people through his coaching and his content. So excited to learn from him today on how to make 500K. But before we get there, we got to start with Justin's story. It's a story unlike any I've heard. It's a powerful one. It might hit you in the gut. So Justin, before you reach this peak in tech sales and everything you're doing today, you went through some major adversity. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me on. We're happy to chat. My story is a very interesting one. To start things off, I almost died twice before the age of 11. And I say that because when we think about what makes us who we are, everyone sees the world through a specific lens. And we all have those handful of events that we've had in our life that really shape us. So for me, when I almost died twice, and then the second time, when I was 10 years old, I got into a snowmobile accident, I had a 1 in 10 chance of living. If you imagine this, they told me I'd never speak again. So imagine being 10 years old in a hospital bed, practicing sign language at night. Imagine not being able to eat, for over a year. Imagine having to breathe out of a tube in your throat for 2 years. Spending holidays in the hospital. I had over 34 surgeries, and over the course of several years, and it was a very difficult thing that I went through. But it's a big reason why I do what I do and why I've been able to achieve what I've achieved. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows because, because I've been through that. I married that adversity at a very young age with the fact that, I grew up blue collar, youngest of 5 boys, first one from my family to graduate from college. And a lot of people have done that. So, I'm not special there. But if you think about it, coming through having a 1 in 10 chance of living, being the first one from my family to graduate from college, I was seen as somewhat the golden child, right? Because you go through that, everyone says, "Hey, Justin, God saved you for a reason. You're meant to do big things," as you can imagine. So going through college and, getting ready to take on the world, all full of piss and vinegar, I thought I was ready. And the real world punched me in the face, and they realized, they don't care about your story. And I was absolutely horrible at sales. In fact, my first year in sales, I literally made $0 in commission. I was horrible at it. And I was about to get fired until I had a big breakthrough moment for me when I had some really deep self-reflection. And I realized that I wasn't doing everything in my control. And that's when I went all in on myself. Because, Confucius famously said, every person lives 2 lives. And the second one begins when you realize you only have one. And because I was faced with my mortality at a very young age, I have a very unique perspective on how short life was, or short life is, and how fragile it is, where most people don't realize that until much later in life. And fast forward to when I was failing, about to get fired, what led to my breakthrough was really just reflecting on everything that I've been through. And I took that as a sign that, look, you're here. You only got one shot at this thing called life. You've been lucky to survive some very serious things. Let's make the most of it. Let's go all in. Let's go for broke. And that's when I flipped the switch and went all in on developing myself. And that's what led to a lot of great things in my career, from doing well at Salesforce, scaling a few startups, a couple acquisitions that I helped tee up, becoming a CRO, now running my business. But yeah, it was a very tough sledding in the beginning. But what I like to say is the day that I got in my accident when I was 10 years old, it was the second best day of my life, after marrying my wife, because without that, I wouldn't have the perspective that I have today. And I'm extremely grateful for it.
Wow. And congratulations on being the ultimate closer and marrying a great wife, I imagine. That's huge. I'm working on that deal right now. But hey, it's crazy that you have such a unique perspective because of what you went through, almost dying and twice. And yet you did go into sales with this powerful story, and you failed big time. You were just making your base salary. And I know there's people out there in the audience that might come across this that is in a similar state where they're just making their base, and they might have what's called based on one of your posts, a 60K mindset in which they're operating. And so I'm just curious, how were you thinking at that time that was leading you to just make the base? And could we start to dig into some of the mindset shifts that happened that got you on the upward trajectory?
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to fault and responsibility. So we can't control what happens to us. We can only control how we respond to it. And imagine this. I wasn't even at 60K. I was at 30K. So imagine making 30K a year gross pre-tax and being $100,000 in debt.
Wow. That's a good place.
Right. So as you can imagine, my back was fully against the wall. And I was a quitter. That was the truth. I quit all through high school and college. Everything that got tough for me, I quit, and I didn't stick through it. And what I realized, when I was struggling in sales in the real world, was no one's coming to save me. And I've quit up until this point many times, and that didn't give me what I wanted. So the alternative is, let's go for broke, because clearly what I'm doing right now isn't working. So it's not necessarily I don't like to think about it as a 60K a year versus 500K a year mindset. It's
okay.
Average versus elite, right? What does it take to be in the top 1%? What does it take to be elite at any craft, whatever you're doing? And it comes down to taking complete ownership of your situation, regardless of whether or not it's your fault. And when I was at that point in my career, I was struggling, and but the reality was I wasn't taking ownership. I wasn't investing in myself. I was waiting for my CEO to develop me, which, newsflash for you salespeople out there, your company will never develop you as fast as you want to be developed, period. And most companies, even massive companies, are terrible at developing their people. And I was letting all of these things happen to me and not taking ownership of it. So for me, it just comes down to taking ownership of my life, my skill set, my growth, and just being much more aggressive with how I approached every day.
That was a good call out, that most all companies, whether you're a startup or big enterprise, don't train people very well and at the rate at which you'd want to be trained to reach your goals. And so you took ownership for your own development. And fortunately, now people can work with coaches like you to accelerate that learning and development and absolutely crush it. But what did you turn to at the time in terms of resources to train yourself outside of what your company gave you?
Someone told me when I was young, to be the best, you learn from the best. Because success leaves clues. Anything that you're trying to achieve, someone has done it many times. And they've also probably done it from even worse situations than you have.
Man,
You're not special.
that's encouraging to hear, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? It's not complicated. You find people that have done what you're trying to do and you study them. It's really that simple. So that's what I look for. I look for mentors. I look for coaches. I look for all of that, right? And whether that's a paid engagement or just someone that, I could buy lunch, whatever I was doing, I was just trying to absorb as much as I can from people who have accomplished what I'm trying to accomplish. And what I also did was I refused to take advice from people that weren't living the life that I wanted to live. And when you marry those two things of taking in what I want from who I want and avoiding what I don't want from the folks that I don't want their lives, that makes it a lot simpler to focus on what's going to move the needle. And that's really what I did.
That's a good call out, that there are some people giving advice that don't have the results, and we have to be really wary to like not pay attention to them. And because on LinkedIn, as you know, and social media, there's just so many influencers now. So finding the right people like yourself who have the proven success further down the path to learn from and model after is key. Did you, when you were at Salesforce, for example, identify a top performer? I'm going to get a little tactical, but like, how did that go down? Like, what actions did you take to find mentors there?
Yeah. So whatever I'm trying to learn a new skill, first thing I got to be aware of is what are my skill gaps. So for me as a rep, as a leader, now as an entrepreneur, I still use the same philosophy. I identify what my skill gaps are or what I believe is standing in the way of me achieving my goals, whether that's being number one, promoted, income, you name it. And then I identify who are the people that are strong at said skills. And then I study them, replicate, and then iterate. And here's the process around it. So think about you're an account executive. Well, to be great as an account executive, there's hundreds of micro skills that make this up. From how you organize your day to how you, do your prospecting, thinking about prospecting, lead generation versus email versus cold call versus social. Those are all different skills. To how you look on camera even, right? These are all different skills and things for you to learn. So what I did was I cherry picked who are the people that are the best at the different skills. And I picked and choose the advice and the insights and the systems that worked for them. I replicated it. I didn't try to reinvent the wheel because I didn't know enough to be able to do it. So I replicated it, used it. Once I got confident and comfortable with it, then I started adding a little bit of my own flavor to it. Then I made it my own. So I just continue to repeat and do that for all the skill gaps that I've had throughout my entire career, and acquire, replicate, iterate, rinse and repeat. And it's all what I've always done.
So if someone wants to make 500K a year, there are certain skill sets that you really need to refine. And you mentioned, I mean, yeah, you got to still be an owner and prospect. You might not be an SDR anymore, but you got to create opportunities. But there's so many other skills, right? You mentioned like professionalism on camera. I love you called that out because that's people might overlook that. But you're looking great right now, man. Like I even look at my own lighting; it could improve. So you're just motivating me to improve that. Perception really matters. But what are some of the most important skills, even though there could be like 100, that are going to make the biggest impact for getting to that 500K mark?
It comes down to what I call is mastering the 3 C's. Okay. Number one is conscience, craft, career. Okay. Oh. So let's take them down one by one. Conscience is really your mindset, because I think Tony Robbins said it, success is 80% psychology, 20% strategy and execution. I can teach you all the skills in the world, but if your head's not in the right place, you're going to burn out. So you have to have systems in place for how you think about handling adversity. There are systems around it. It's not art. It is a science. And it's harder to learn those skills because there's not a lot of playbooks out there, but there's systems out there. And that's one of the things that teach my clients. After you learn how to master your mindset, well, then that's how you master your craft. This is A to Z what it takes to be a lead in sales, from prospecting, discovery, demo, negotiation, multi-threading, literally everything in between.
Yeah.
I can nail it off. I don't want to bore everyone.
No,
Right?
it's good stuff though.
Those are the actual skills of actual selling. And then, believe it or not, how to master your career. Because believe it or not, we're all in this crazy game called corporate America. And games are fun when you know the rules. But most people don't know the rules of corporate America, like how to play the game right, to set yourself up for success, put yourself in the right position with the most amount of upside, least amount of downside, and not do that like sleazy politics crap, right? Like actually play the game right. And the way you got to think about the 3 C's is think about it like a tripod. That's what I always like to say, right? What happens to the tripod? Well, if one of the legs falls out, the whole thing falls over, right? So you can get pretty far by just being good at sales, like just the skills of selling. But you're not going to perform at a high level long term if you don't master the other ones, right? You have to master all 3 in order to not only succeed at a high level, but succeed at a high level long term. Because we're not just here to make 500K. I know that sounds crazy if someone's only at 100, 200, hey, how do I get to 5? Totally get it. But that's not your real goal. Your goal is freedom. We all want to be free. And income, of course, is a great measuring stick, because the higher your income, the more flexibility and options you have. And that helps accelerate your path to being free. And when I say free, I don't mean going retiring on a beach, right? It just means being able to do what you want, when you want, where you want, with who you want. But that's what we're ultimately all after. So if you're going to try to achieve freedom as fast as humanly possible, you have to learn how to master the 3 C's.
And Justin, it seems like for you, as you've created freedom for yourself, you're able to focus on impacting sellers and helping them create their own freedom. And doesn't that feel good, man? Don't you feel good about the type of work you're doing to like make an impact for people like that?
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the reason why I do what I do is because, I want to help people. And I know there's a lot of people that are like pitching courses and people just trying to like shove things down your throat, trying to make a quick buck. Like, look, I was a CRO in tech. Okay. Let's just put it out there. I wasn't hurting on my W-2. Let's just put it that way. The reason why I do this is really simple. When I was coming up, because I didn't come from a corporate background, no one in my family worked in corporate America. So like, I didn't know all these unwritten rules.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything. I made all these mistakes. And I was terrible at sales, you name it. I made every mistake in the book. All I wanted was someone that was going to get in the trenches with me, be hands-on, say, hey, there's a landmine up there, look out. And no one tells you these things. So when I thought about, when I was a CRO, this is when I had this light bulb moment, because I achieved success at a very high level, but I wasn't as fulfilled as I wanted to be. I realized I'm not making the type of impact I really want to make. I want to help change lives. So all I try to be for people with the programs that I run is what I wanted in my life 10 years ago. That's literally all I wanted. Someone that's going to hold my feet to the fire, help me get in the trenches, roll up their sleeves, not give me generic guidance, right? And someone's going to shoot me straight. The no fluff BS like that. That's what I wanted. And now that I have the ability to do that right now, I just got a text from a client, yesterday, first year at Salesforce, when we first started working together, and our first one-on-one, they're an enterprise seller selling in, I think, Fortune 50 accounts. They were struggling with massive imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know if I belong. Literally got to the point where like they were in tears. And fast forward, they just sent me a text saying, hey, I just wanted you to know that I'm going to finish at 135%, and there's a good chance I'm going to make President's Club.
Wow.
And when I get that text, it's the most beautiful feeling in the world. Like, I closed massive deals as a seller. it's just nothing compared to seeing other people transform and seeing other people have those light bulb moments. Like, it's incredible.
I feel chills right now. You can't see it through the screen, but they're there. And I remember I had imposter syndrome when I started at Google Cloud. Imposter syndrome is something that impacts all of us, especially when we're chasing meaningful opportunities, trying to reach our potential. So I do have to ask you, how does someone manage imposter syndrome to show up anyways and succeed?
The way I like to think about imposter syndrome is a lot of times it's like fabricated and it's more confusing than it actually is. Imposter syndrome, in my opinion, typically comes from a lack of confidence. Well, why do you have a lack of confidence? Well, 9 times out of 10 is because you don't have enough evidence that you know what you're doing. So the way I like to tackle imposter syndrome is very similar to that famous phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
So let's think about, well, why do I have imposter syndrome? Let's say I jump into a new role as an enterprise AE. Well, if it's my first time doing it, I don't have a stack of evidence that I could succeed as an enterprise AE.
Yep.
So rightfully so, I'm not confident. Okay, well, what am I confident in? Am I confident in my ability to show up every day? Am I confident in my ability to prepare for a call, do my research? Am I confident in my ability to film review or listen to my calls, role play? Am I confident in my ability to implement the coaching that I'm getting? Am I confident in my ability to be very persistent with people and follow up effectively? These are all skills that I've acquired along the way that I may not have applied to the enterprise world, but I'm confident in them in the other worlds. So what I do is I lean on the skills that I am confident in, and I put one foot in front of the other, and I stack wins. I stack micro victories, because we don't just win at enterprise all at once, and we don't win at life all at once. All we do is try to win the day, because if you win enough days, you win a week. If you win enough weeks, you win a month. You win enough months, you win a year. You win enough years, you win at life. Every time I've been faced with a situation where I'm not confident, I feel like I'm over my skis or I bit off more than I can chew, I just chunk it down and I identify, okay, what are the skills that I do know and I'm confident in? And then what are the ones that I don't? And the ones that I do know and I'm confident in, I put my energy into those. And the ones that I'm not confident in, I seek the people that have those skills and I acquire that knowledge, just like I did for every role.
Absolutely. So good. So while we're talking about enterprise sales, I want to walk through the nuances of an enterprise deal, maybe looking through the lens of a deal at Salesforce, because a lot of our audience, you know, they're 20 to 30 somethings. Some of them are aspiring SDRs that want to get into a company like Salesforce. Some might be an SDR at Salesforce. Some could be an AE, and maybe they're in like SMB or mid-market. So for all of those people, I'd love to understand the kind of the nuances, walks through what it takes to really progress and close an enterprise deal.
I want you to think of it, instead of how do I become an enterprise AE? How do I close an enterprise deal? I want you to think of it as, instead, how do I get to the NFL? So you play sport growing up, or what would you
Oh yeah. And my favorite to watch is football, but I was best at baseball.
Okay, you're best at baseball. All right. So how long were you playing baseball for?
18 years. I hung up the bat and glove going to college, but I was good.
Yeah. Well, think about it. Well, when you first started playing baseball, were you good enough to play in high school?
No, I wasn't. And by the way, quick side, I said 18 years. That would have meant I played from 0, because that's why I played through 18. So however many years from middle school on. But yeah, no, I wouldn't have, to answer your question.
Of course not, right? You acquire the skills along the way to prepare you for high school, and then for varsity, and then for college, right? You stack those skills over time.
Yeah.
The same thing goes where after high school or college, okay, well, are you a D3 level skill, D2, D1? Going to the minors, going to the pros, right? It's the same analogy. Forget about the NFL, just for baseball. Same thing.
Yep.
So the same thing goes towards trying to become that person that is skilled enough to make $500,000 or more a year, right? It doesn't just happen overnight. You have to think about building your skills one brick at a time. Sales excellence, one of my VPs told me when I was early in my career, is built one talk track at a time. And if you can stack those as much, as quickly and as effectively as you can over time, it's going to happen, right? You just have to stay consistent and continually invest in yourself and always trying to raise the bar. And then the enterprise roles are going to come, because by stacking those skills, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to become a high performer in the SMB roles, which is going to help you build a brand as someone who's a high performer in SMB and someone that companies want to take a chance on, whether that's internal or external, to hire you for mid-market. And then guess what you're going to do? You're going to acquire those skills to become competent and then master mid-market. And then you're going to continue to build a brand of being someone who is always seeking to grow and someone that is a high performer. And guess what's going to happen? Same thing. You're going to be tapped on the shoulder to jump into that enterprise world, because you've proven through all the things you do when no one's watching, which is you'll film, review, practice, investing in your skills, learning from mentors, whatever that is. All of those things are going to show up eventually on the dashboard. And then because of that, people will say, hey, this guy's ready. Let's take a chance on him. And then you're going to jump in that role. And guess what? We're going to start the roller coaster all over. But it never ends. You just have to make sure that you're always trying to improve yourself a little bit every day, every week, every year. And then over time, it's going to come, right? The question is, how long is it going to take? And the answer to that question is going to be dependent on two things. Number one, are you seeking people that can shave time off your timeline? So if it took me 15 years to learn a skill, well, let's say you're smarter than me and you can learn that same skill in 10 years. Well, that's 5 years sooner. Boom, that's great. Well, if you're working with me or someone who's done this before, if I could teach you what took me 15 years to learn in 6 months, and then you master it in, let's say, 2 years, well, we just shaved 13 years off your learning curve.
Gosh.
Right? So that's number one, right? You find those people that are acquiring those skills. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead. But I'm just thinking dollarizing that. If you working with you leads to 500K a year, or even approaching it 250K or more, and you can get that sooner. I mean, you just look at the cost of not working with you, for example. It's like crazy. Or like working with someone who could get you there faster. So continue on, because you were about to hit on another idea. I just had to say that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's number one is finding the people. And then number two is just how aggressive do you want to be about it, right? And look, what I'm not trying to do here is saying everyone needs to go all in and empty their bank account, to invest in coaches and mentors. But the reality is we only have one shot at this thing called life, and life is short. So, you should want to act with urgency, because the question isn't, well, how much does it cost you not working with somebody? The real question is, and I want you all to think about this for a second, how much is a year of your life worth? And if you were to think about a year, if you were to get that year back, what would that be worth to you? And think about that previous example. If we shave 12 years off that learning curve, that's 12 years where you can monetize that skill that you didn't have before. And that's how you got to think about it. So everything we're trying to do is accelerate our path to acquire these skills and information by seeking people out that have done that. So it's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it is, but it's also not complicated. You just have to be aggressive and go for it.
So taking ownership is a fundamental aspect of high performance and getting to the 500K club. It seems another aspect from a mindset perspective is urgency.
100%. If you're not urgent, nothing else matters. Look, and I'm not saying you have to be, right? But in order to be in the top 1%, you have to be willing to do what 99% aren't. And 99% of people aren't willing to be urgent, aren't willing to be aggressive, aren't willing to do the film review, do the dirty work, invest in themselves. They're not willing to do it. And I'm not saying you have to buy a bunch of things. Absolutely not, right? There's so much information for free on the internet that people can leverage, right? But you have to be aggressive at finding that and implementing it. Or that's the dirty work that most people aren't willing to do.
Yeah. If only we could have that urgency every day to know life is short and experience it, not just know it intellectually. I mean, I've had some moments where I was on an airplane and it's so funny, but I was like, God, let me live. I got more work to do. Or like life, I just had these moments where I felt like this healthy fear of how short life could be and that you never know what could happen. But when you have that urgency too, don't you think like you also take more risks? And I guess like how much has being willing to risk, whether it's rejection, failure, looking dumb, how much has that played into your success and just generally in life and in sales?
I mean, it's everything. Your risk tolerance has a direct correlation to how much potential you can unlock for yourself. If you're not willing to take risks, you'll never reach your full potential. I'll give you an example. I left Salesforce not once, but twice as number one. I wasn't struggling, right? And I did it because I knew that deep down, even though I loved my experience at Salesforce, I got a ton out of it. I knew that I was playing it safe there. I just knew that deep down. And I wasn't going to reach my full potential unless I got out there and left my comfort zone. And look, I've made bad decisions in my career. There's been mistakes, 100%. But the willingness to take the risks is what ultimately matters. I had a conversation with a death doula, a year or two ago. And, death doula, this is someone that literally helps someone prepare for the transition after life. And when I met with them, I said, I'm fascinated by what you do. Because you've seen a lot of people at the end of their life.
Wow.
And I said, when you're talking to these people, what are the regrets? What are they saying? And there's two that she heard almost every single time. Number one is people always regret not spending as much time as they could with their family. And two, people not shooting their shot, taking the risk, going for it. And whatever that is for you, that was really powerful for me to hear, because this is someone who's seen, like hundreds of people at that point say that, like, hey, I regret not, starting that business, taking that leap of faith, whatever that is for that individual, taking that bucket list trip, right? And when I thought about that, I thought it was so powerful because, when we look back at our lives, we're never going to regret the risks that we take. We're always going to look back and say, what if? What if I did do that? What if I did go for it? And I take that mindset to every day, because all I want to do is just win today, because I'll never get today back. And time is the most precious commodity that we can never get more of.
So how do you win a specific day? Because if you stack those days, that leads to transformation. So what does winning your day look like?
A couple things. In the big picture, at the end of my day, am I exhausted? That's actually something that I measure, like how truly exhausted am I by the end of my day? Then I look at, well, how do I get there? Well, did I come into the day with a plan? Did I take care of myself? Did I do something that was really difficult? Did I have a really beautiful conversation with someone that I care about? Did I laugh? Did something move me emotionally? Right? These are things that I look at every single day. And you marry those things with really just having an empty gas tank at the end of the day, that's how we win. But then what I also look at is, can I make my gas tank bigger? And here's what I mean by that. Everything in life is fueled by our energy. If your energy sucks, nothing else matters. So if I can invest in my energy, what I put in my body, how I take care of myself, can that unlock another level of energy? And that's something that I've done over time to try to increase the gas tank, but it's always with the intention of, hey, I just want my gas tank to be empty at the end of the day.
What are the tactics you've implemented to increase the gas tank, whether it's nutrition or physical habits, mindfulness? I'm projecting here, but what are the things that you do?
I mean, you kind of hit on the major ones. Garbage in, garbage out. You put trash in your body, it's going to affect your energy, right? You only get one body, so invest in it. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to what you put in your body and your health and wellness. So take that very seriously. I'm blessed because I was reminded at a very young age of how fragile the body is. So I just take that very seriously. Am I perfect? Absolutely not, right? I mean, look, when I'm, right now, I eat paleo for context. But, when I was eating paleo, I mean, I love me some Taco Bell, right? So don't get me wrong. Like, I'll have a cheat meal, when it happens. No one's perfect here. But the whole mindset is, I want to set myself up so that I don't look back and say, like, I could feel my energy, which is like bad that day. And when I look at that, then I look at, all right, well, what did I put in my body the day before or the 2 days before? Because that's what affects, yesterday. So I just continue to look at it. It's a constant process. Everyone's body's a little different. I'm not saying everyone eat paleo. That's just what works for me. But, take care of yourself, take care of your body, invest in it, and don't skimp on that.
So shifting back to sales skills that get you to that 500K earners club, I thought you mentioned something that sales is about stacking talk tracks. Is that what you said?
Excellence is stacking talk tracks. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you dig into that? Because I was trying to keep that pinned in my mind to get back to. What does that mean?
So let's say you're on a discovery call. And one of the challenges that a lot of my clients struggle with is they'll run discovery calls. They think it goes really well, but the prospect goes dark or they're not wanting to commit to next steps. Well, then we look at, okay, well, are you blocking and tackling with how you execute that meeting? Meaning, let's say you have a 30-minute call. Are you breaking it down? What I like to say, like 5-25. So are you properly using the first 5 minutes to frame the call and set up the call? Are you effectively executing the meat of the conversation? Are you making sure that you're executing the next steps part of it, right? Each one of those are compartments that are made up of different skills. And I can go super deep on all those if you want, but that's how we think about it, right? We just continue to refine and dig into each one of these areas and identify, like, hey, what are you doing in these areas? How can we improve that talk track? You might be asking the right question, but you're not actively listening. So then we work on teaching them how to stop interrogating people and teach them how to have conversations with people, right? And just one at a time. And you're not going to master it right away, but that's why you focus on implementing one at a time. You get comfortable, then you stack. Get comfortable, then you stack. And then, believe it or not, before you know it, you can transform your skills and how you communicate and how you execute calls really quickly. But what you shouldn't be doing is trying to fix all areas, let's say, of a discovery call at once. Focus on one chunk at a time and build on it.
And you can apply this to a cold call. You can apply this to a demo conversation.
You can approach this. You can approach this in every aspect of sales.
Wow.
Every single aspect of sales.
Here we are biting the elephant, or eating the elephant one bite at a time. And so the elephant that is closing a monster deal consists of all these little bites: cold call to get in the door, discovery call, demo, eventually negotiation. You better believe I'm going to take you up on the offer to go into the discovery call. So we've got the first 5 minutes. Did you say 5 minutes intro, 20 minutes meet of the call, and then 5 minutes to close on next steps, right? Do you mind digging into this? Because I feel like this is an epitome of a sales cycle to set the tone for the relationship and ops. So like, what's the intro look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing I would say is, question for you and for everyone out there. What would you say is your number one goal of a sales call? What is it? What's the number one goal?
Oh gosh, because I have multiple, honestly. So you have to pick one.
Pick one.
God, I'm going to be philosophical and say I'm detaching from outcomes, and I need to seek to qualify and understand if they are the right fit for us and thus for them.
All right. You're in the ballpark. Okay. But we're going to go a little bit higher level here.
Okay.
Well, your number one goal for a sales call is for them to leave that conversation saying one thing: that was a good use of my time.
Oh, I like that.
Now, how you do that, there's a bunch of micro things that go into that. When we talk about detaching from the outcome, right, making sure it's a good fit, all of that could feed into it. But when you think about it, it's like people don't want to waste their time. So a big reason why people struggle in sales calls is they don't effectively use the time. So jumping back into your question of like, how do we break down a sales call?
Oh, good. Great job, by the way, calling that out, man. That was awesome because my gut at first was to say, oh, I want to get the next step in the meeting. But then I realized, isn't that real quick? What's your thoughts on that? Why would that not be the ideal or the place to, or what you should focus on for your goal?
I mean, you should 100% do that. That is part of the mechanics of a call. But if you can understand big picture, the ultimate goal is for them to leave that conversation saying that was a good use of my time. That's going to, number one, increase the chances that they're going to want to do a next step with you.
Yep.
Number two, make sure they show up to that call.
Yeah.
Number three, when you're in the deal and you're trying to progress it, they'll be significantly more responsive. Number four, if the deal is stalling or maybe it isn't a fit, they're not going to ghost you. If you're getting ghosted in your deals, you're not creating an environment where they want to communicate with you. No one should be getting ghosted. That doesn't mean you're going to win every deal, but you never should be getting ghosted in deals in your pipeline.
Wow. So this is the secret to creating a context where the prospect is comfortable communicating and you will not be ghosted. And that's the key. So, okay, the goal is to have the prospect feel it was a good use of their time. And one final piece of context I have to throw in is I believe that a lot of salespeople have conditioned prospects to think that salespeople are going to waste their time. So that's what we're going up against. So this intro and your whole structure will leave the prospect feeling like their time was appreciated and it's worth their time. So back over to you on that intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't even think about the first 5 minutes as the intro. I see the first 5 minutes is framing the call.
Okay.
So the framing the call come through purpose, plan, outcome, PPO.
Oh, I've heard this before. Okay, go.
Yeah, so purpose, why are we here? Plan is what are we going to cover? Outcome is what are we working towards? So let's break those down one by one. And the reason why it's so important, like when I'm working with a client, this is one of the first things I dig into. And 90% of the people that I work with, even people that are 10 years into their selling career, they don't do this well, right? And they're shocked at how much value that this adds to their conversations, because they'll come to me like, I always run out of time in my discovery call, or I always feel like I'm struggling to set next steps. And I dig into how they run the first 5 minutes and they set it up for failure from the get-go. So it is a very easy win for anyone. So I'll give you an example of how we're setting the call. Hey, the reason why we're here is to see if it makes sense for you to evaluate our solution. All right, that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And what I'd love to do is learn more about your current environment, how things are set up today, what's working, what's not, and then of course, what would move the needle for you in a potential solution. And then also give you the high level of how we work with other clients, how the sausage is made, some of the results that they see. And by the end of the call, we'll be able to mutually decide if it makes sense to take a next step. And we'll reserve the last 5 minutes of the call to outline what those next steps are. So that's what I had outlined for the call. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that is covered to make sure this conversation is a 10 out of 10?
So smooth.
Well, and by doing this, guess what we're doing? We're establishing a GPS. you're never going to leave your house without having a destination in mind, right? Well, what happens in all these sales calls is a sales rep just gets right into it.
Yeah.
Hey, my name's Justin. I'm your rep, and I'm going to give you a demo today. No. You're not there to give them a demo. You're there to see if the technology is something that can help solve a problem for them, right? Now, the mechanism of how you can do that might be by delivering a demo, but that's not the why. So by establishing the GPS and where we're going and how we're going to get there, it makes it so much easier for everyone to be on the same page. And by setting the tone that, hey, I want to make sure we reserve 5 minutes at the end to see if it makes sense to do next steps and then discuss what those are, it sets the tone up front. Then, hey, the last 5 minutes are on next steps. And then last but not least, I'm asking you, hey, is there anything else that you want to make sure we cover?
Yes.
So that this call is a 10 out of 10 for you. And guess what that does? That gets you making sure that you're not being sold, that we're having a conversation, that we're not just covering what I want to cover or covering what you want to cover. And we're on the same page, because the whole goal is getting away from selling to people and helping people. And that first 5 minutes, that frame is how you do it.
I've heard it said that selling is helping. And you set up the GPS right there for the conversation. Now, can you take us through the aspects of that 20 minutes where you're really digging in? Like, what are some key things to focus on to capitalize on those next 20 minutes?
Number one, I gotta be prepped. I gotta have my research, right? I have to know about 3 areas. I think about it as like industry, company, person, or persona. Okay. And if I can have information and some type of insights and a point of view flashed out from my research and prep, and then of course marry that with the notes that I may have, that's going to help me be significantly more informed in the conversation. And when I get into the conversation, what helps it actually be a conversation and not an interrogation is what I call the fall framework. Okay. And the fall framework prevents you from sounding like you're just checking boxes, right? Because we've all been on that sales call where you're like, hey, so what made you join the call today? Great. So tell me about your business. Great. So what are your priorities this year? Great. So, what have you tried to do to solve it? Great. So what are you looking for in a solution? Great. So like when you check the boxes, when I'm debriefing with a rep, they'll leave it, they'll say, hey, Jeff, like, hey, I learned about their business. I got their priorities. I got what they care about. I got their pains. I got all this stuff. But for some reason, like they're ghosting me. Well, yeah, because you weren't having a conversation with them. So where the fall framework comes into play is it gets you having a conversation with them. And then that provides a better experience, because remember what the North Star is. So here's how we do it. The first letter of fall is F. So that means frame. The frame is the context or the why behind the question. Because just like we provide a GPS when we're setting up the call, well, we want to provide a GPS when we're asking a question. It's like if you've ever seen an athlete get interviewed and you hear the interviewer ask him a question, it kind of feels like they're putting it on a silver platter for them, right?
Yeah.
You've been on the IR for the last 2 weeks, and there was a lot of noise around what the impact is going to be, you being on the field with so-and-so and it affecting the clubhouse. Now that you're out there, how does it feel, right? There's all that context.
Yeah.
It makes it easy for the athlete, right? Well, most sales reps just jump into the question. And part of me having a great experience as a buyer is not feeling like I'm mentally exhausted processing the questions that you're asking me. So if you can frame the question with context, and I'll give you an example, it's going to make it significantly easier for me to do that. So here's an example of a frame. So I'm talking to a CEO, and this is the first conversation. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. CEO, I was listening to your earnings call, and you mentioned that X, Y, and Z were the big initiatives for you going into 2025. to help you, improve the bottom line for the business. So that's the frame.
Yes.
Okay? And it does a couple things. Number one, it helps them understand why I'm about to ask the question that I'm asking. And two, here's what it also does. It shows them that I did my homework without telling them I did my homework, right? Because I've also seen reps make the mistake. They'll say, hey, I just want to let you know before this call, I read your earnings report. I was all over your website. I was looking at all these things. Like, they don't care, right? You can build that insight into the question. So I frame the question, that's the F. And then we ask the question, that's the A, F-A. So in this instance, I talk about the earnings report, earnings call. Then I'll say, of X, Y, and Z, if you only have the bandwidth of one of those, what would be the number one you would choose right now? And by doing this, I'm going to get a much better answer from them because they heard me give context on the question, right? So we're already going to get a better answer because we gave them the context around it. We framed it properly, okay? Then after we ask the question, we jump into the first L, which is listen. Do not think about your next question. You need to be fully present and locked in and listening to the exact answer that they give you. You need to be listening to not only what they say, you need to be listening to the words that they use, the specific language. You should be paying attention to their body language if they're on camera, their tonality that they're using. All of these things feed into how you're interpreting what they're saying. So that's the L, the first L. And the reason why we have to be locked in is because the best way to get to a conversation is the second L, which is layer. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be asking a layering question, leveraging their language to learn more about it. So the example I'll give you, building on what I've said, earnings call, top three things, X, Y, Z, what should you pick? And let's say their answer is, well, X, Y, and Z, all of them are important, Justin, but really without Y, X and Z can't happen because we have a lot of things that we're juggling, but like Y is really the linchpin for us. So what I'm hearing here is from the answer, like, all right, there's something there. There's meat here that I need to unpack. So I'm going to use their language and say something along the lines of, okay, I appreciate you sharing. It's like, when you say like, why is the linchpin? What exactly do you mean by that? So using their language, that's going to help unpack what they're giving me. And instead of jumping to the next question in my checklist, it's going to give me so much meat that I can leverage, not against them, but to see if I can help them. And the beauty of this is it provides a significantly better experience for your buyers. Because what do we all want? We all want to feel heard. We all want to feel seen. And we also don't want to waste our time. So what's going to make me feel heard? What's going to make me feel seen? What's going to make me feel like someone that actually cares? Well, they're using my language to ask layering questions to seek to understand before just jumping to the next question. And here's the fun part. When you start to become really effective at this, you can ask a layering question on the answer. So let's say they say, well, why is really the linchpin? Because 2 years ago, we tried to accomplish X without Y, and it created a disaster for our sales organization. So we need to make sure if we're going to do it right, we got to tackle Y before X and Z. And guess what I could do? Oh, a disaster. Tell me more. Like, what happened? And think about what I'm learning. Now I'm in the real value of the conversation. And we are no longer in discovery. It is no longer a discovery call. It is now a conversation. And you use this framework to remove the art of discovery because there's no art. This is science. This is a method, a clear method to the madness to have a productive conversation to see if we can help them. And then before you know it, those 20 minutes are going to be up. So you want to think about, the 3 to 5 key areas you want to dig into, to see if it's a fit, as well as help them understand how you help other clients and then get their buy-in. And if you get their buy-in, that's when you confirm next steps and move it from there. But that's the big thing. Is like you can go from discovery calls to conversations, massive game changer for you.
What a masterclass on discovery, which, as you said, is really about having conversations, and you stack enough powerful conversations like that where the customer, the prospect and future customer feels heard and like you valued their time and made the most of it. That's going to lead to some nice deals. So just closing out on discovery, how do you wrap up the last 5 minutes?
Well, when I think about a discovery call, and let's say this is an intro call to build on this example.
Yep.
First thing I'm seeking to understand is, their current situation, what they're looking for at a high level. And then I'm making sure that I'm spending a couple minutes helping them understand how we help other people solve for similar challenges. Now, it's important to call out, I'm not saying that I can help them. I'm not assuming that. And the reason why is I don't want to be that first date person. Now, that first date person, so imagine you're on a first date with someone, you're 10 minutes into grabbing coffee with them. And they say, yo, Chris, you know what your problem is? I know I can help you, but like, you know what your problem is? You're like, hold on. I've known you for like 10 minutes. What are you talking about? You don't know you can help me. You don't know my life. You don't know my stuff, right? And they lose all credibility. Well, salespeople, within 10 minutes of a conversation with an executive, will say, oh, I know we can help you. No, you don't. You don't. I can guarantee you don't. You think you can. You very well can, but you don't know. So you have to take that approach in how you communicate the problems that you solve for people that look like them. And you paint that picture of how you help them. And then you ask them, hey, if we were able to accomplish X, Y, or Z, would that be something that would be worth evaluating or worth investing in? Whatever that next step or call to action is for you. And then once they say, yeah, that sounds like it's something worth exploring. Okay, well, that sounds good. Well, we have a couple minutes left. Let's talk about next steps and align on what that looks like. And then I would prescribe next steps for them. So, my role is to help you make an educated decision as quickly and effectively as possible. So in order for us to do that, here's the next step that would need to occur, to set you up to properly make a decision, right? And then I walk them through that. But then I make sure I'm not leaving that meeting without something scheduled, because that's how you make sure to capitalize on the momentum that you built in this conversation that you just had with them.
Man, this conversation has been unbelievable. I'm mesmerized. I can't wait to watch it again. And I'm looking at the clock and we have 2 minutes. And I have to admit, I wanted to ask you about playing the game in the corporate world. And I wanted to ask you about your program just with a little more details to round out. But I need to check, like with any executive I'm meeting with, like, do you have any extra time? Like, I could have managed this better. It's funny we're talking about it. But do you have an extra, like, I don't know, 5 minutes to hit on those two things? Or
Yeah, I got a couple extra minutes for sure.
Thank you. Okay. I want to talk about playing that corporate game and maybe through the lens of like the goal that we talked about today is getting to make $500K to create a life of freedom, So like, what does it take to play the game right to get to that point where you have that opportunity?
It's a really good question. Number one, you have to continue to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Number two, as soon as you start to get comfortable, you need to identify what's going to be the next move for you. And when you do that, you need to seek out people that can help you assess whether or not it's the right move or not, because the grass is always greener. Make an educated decision on what's right for you. And then whatever situation that you're in, what I like to say is you do 3 things. And these are principles that I kind of live by. Execute, evolve, enjoy. Execute comes down to controlling what's 100% in your control. My mindset, my attitude, my effort, my coachability. Those are things that are 100% in my control. Evolve, always seeking to raise the bar every day. And then enjoy. This is where I stack the wins, celebrate the small victories. And you do that, and that's going to, create momentum for your career and keep it. What I would say that is what I don't like using the word hack, but it is, let's say maybe a shortcut that can help people is going off the well-worn path can be a really effective strategy when done right. So here's what I mean by done right. People love to jump to startups because everyone's like, I want to be at the next Facebook. Well, there's only one Facebook. Okay. Only 1 in 250 companies ever make it past 10 million in revenue. Think about that. Right? The failure rate is very high for startups. So when you're early in your career, you want to get a foundation built. And startups are very ill-equipped in helping you build that foundation early on. So get that foundation built as fast as humanly possible. And then from there, you could take calculated risks. And by taking calculated risks with the most amount of upside, least amount of downside, right? Still a risk. If you do that consistently while doing execute, evolve, enjoy, if you're doing that, it's going to shave years off your career. It just will. And then if you just continue to do that and continue to find people to help you along the way and guide you, it's going to accelerate your path, right? It's going to accelerate your path. There's no way it can't. It's impossible for this not to happen if you are approaching this with urgency.
One final spin-off question on this is it seems like you've lived this out by starting with the Salesforces of the world. And then did your risk taking and leaps was to the startup realm? Just real quick, want to understand what that looked like in action for you.
Yeah, it's 100% what it was. I took calculated risk to join startups, to help make a bigger impact, help build things. That's absolutely what I did.
So the final thing I have to ask about is your coaching program. And here's the thing. We already saw your heart behind it, which is so inspiring to really help people create freedom. It brings you a lot of joy. And we've seen the evidence of how incredible of a coach you are through this, the generous insight, man. So generous of you to share answers to the test like this in this hour-long conversation. Is there anything else you would add to your coaching program, what it's about and who it's for?
Yeah. So the softwaresalescoach.com, I run multiple programs for our sales reps, sales leaders, and even sales orgs. So I have different accelerators that I offer for them, but it's specific for technology people. I don't coach on insurance. I don't coach in areas where I don't know backwards and forwards.
Yep.
I only focus on the areas that, I can move the needle significantly. And it's really geared for people that not only are in tech, but people that are hungry and people that aren't just looking for, tactics, because you're going to get that. Yeah, of course. But this is about transformation. This is about helping you achieve freedom because, my average client sees anywhere from a 50 to 100K increase in their income within 12 months of working with me. But that's really not how I measure success, as weird as it may sound. The way I measure success with my clients, and I genuinely believe this, is I want them to look back on their experience 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it may be, and say, my life is fundamentally better from this. And that's my ultimate goal. That's how I structure it. And that's how I design it to make maximum impact for folks. So if you're one of those people that are curious to chat about it, the thing to know is we guarantee results. Meaning if you literally don't see results, we'll give your money back. But also the more important thing is I do not work with people that I don't know for certain that I can help. So if people want to chat, of course, reach out to me or my team, happy to chat and see if it's a fit. And if not, no worries. But yeah, that's a little bit about me and my programs.
What's clear is that through your programs, you're not only going to make 50 to 100K plus more, but most importantly, I could tell with your mindset and your backstory, you're going to learn how to live more fully and probably experience some things like joy, peace of mind, connection along the way. So guys, I encourage you to connect with Justin on LinkedIn. I've linked his profile in the description of this video. Check out his programs. The Software Sales Coach is going to be the place where you can find all of his programs. And Justin, just to wrap up finally, any last words of encouragement for our audience before we tie a bow on this conversation?
I'm going to leave you with a harsh truth. And that harsh truth is that every single one of you is not getting out of this thing alive. And I was reminded of that as a very young age. And I remind myself of that every day. And my mission in life, and I'll leave you with my mission. And if you adopt something, I would love it because it's beautiful. And my mission is very simple. When it's my time, whenever that is, hopefully many moons from now, I just want to look back when I'm on my deathbed, surrounded by my loved ones. I just want to know that I left it all in the field. And wherever I land, I land. Whatever I make, however big my company is, whatever it is. But my whole mission in life is just leave the gas tank empty. And if you do that, and focus on that as your goal, I promise you, you're going to have a hell of a story to tell.
Amen. Oh my gosh. Well, to the audience, it's time to increase the gas tank. Leave it on empty every day and be able to look back at our lives one day and say, we made an impact. We have no regrets. Justin, thank you so much for this conversation. And to the audience, to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Justin.